If I said the name Chieftech, you'd be instantly transported back in time. A time where the inside of a PC case was completely unpainted. The outside came in limited colours, including the illustrious smoker's yellow. And tempered glass wasn't even a thought. I think it's safe to say we've come a long way since then. But whatever happened to Chieftech? They ended up going a bit quiet, but in the last year or so, they've made it their mission to make a comeback into the market. And over the last few weeks, I've been looking at their Scorpion 3 White Edition case. And for the money, it's actually not half bad. And do you know what else isn't half bad? This word from our video sponsor. Hello mate, you alright? Yeah, just got all the bits from my banging new gaming PC. Just got to put it together. It's going to be so much better than yours. Oh, right. What did you get then? The latest Intel 12th gen processor, a feature-packed motherboard, and 32 gig of DDR4 memory. See? Miles ahead of yours. You realise that board needs DDR5 memory, don't you? Don't tell me you went and bought the wrong stuff. DDR4 is so 2014. I can't believe you was that stupid. What? No, you're joking. What should I get then? For me, I'd be looking at Corsair's newest Vengeance DDR5 kits, or if you're wanting that all-important RGB, then go for the Dominator Platinum RGB. Oh, you are a lifesaver, thanks, but where can I find out more? By clicking the link in the description below, of course. And you call me the stupid one. So first things first, it's available in your typical black or white colours. Yet, if you're wanting the white, it will set you back a little bit more money, at around 110 euros. And I will say from the get-go, finding stock outside of the EU did actually prove quite difficult. Another thing I want to touch on is that Chieftech's naming convention is a little bit odd, considering this is the third iteration of the case, and a fourth has now been announced too. But with each version, they do seem to give some nice upgrades and included features, like 2 tempered glass panels on the front and side. You also get 4 included 120mm ARGB fans, which can all be controlled through the included RGB hub or synchronise with your motherboard for the ultimate streamlined look. There's also 3 included dust filters, one being magnetic, one being on a rail, and the other just being held in place. But it's still nice to have. So it seems to tick all the right boxes, but how is the quality? Well, it seems Chieftech may have fallen for the same tricks that most brands have fallen for at some point in the past. Matching metal and plastic paint. It's a nightmare to do, especially so on a white case, and while from a distance it's not bad, I just expect a little bit better if I'm parting with that amount of cash. The other area the paint is let down comes down to the finish. Instead of going for a rough matte paint job which can easily hide imperfections, they've gone with gloss, which while it feels nice to touch, it cheapens the look a little bit and also has an orange peel texture to it. But again, it's hard to notice from a distance. Yes, other cases don't fall for this same fate, but they also come in quite a bit more expensive, so you could argue it either way. Now, one area on the outside which I feel is a bit of a letdown is the lack of USB Type-C connectivity. I mean, this is 2022 after all, and while I mentioned the Scorpion 4 has been announced and is on its way, that doesn't have it either. So let's make no bones about it. This is a mid-tower case, so it accepts ATX size motherboards, larger CPU coolers, as you can see, and super long graphics cards. So again, it has all of the right criteria, while not feeling overly large at the same time. Something that some case manufacturers seem to completely forget about. What I'm trying to say is that the space has been utilised really well, and furthermore, the colour scheme carries on the inside too. And there's an interesting quirk here as well. The motherboard standoffs actually form part of the case. Well, most of them do. Out of the typical 9 motherboard standoffs, 8 of them are actually a part of the motherboard tray and are painted to match as well. The 9th one, which sits close to the 7 ventilated expansion slots, will require you to put one in yourself, which I'm still a little confused about. Was this an oversight or part of the design and engineering process? It just doesn't quite make sense to me, but isn't exactly a big deal. Another oversight, and one that I feel is quite important, is the cable routing holes. While having plenty of them is nice, some black rubber grommets would have been nice and would have also helped to separate the all-white design a little bit, especially if using a smaller form factor board. So even with your components installed, there's quite a lot of space going on, or at least near the front. And while there's space at the top for two 120mm fans or a 240mm radiator, if you decide to go with a large CPU cooler like the Noctua D15S, like we have installed here, getting your EPS power connectors in will likely result in some hand injuries. So maybe remember to do that first. If it wasn't for the case moulding around to the side, this kind of would have been a non-issue. So maybe just get rid of that whole bit. Also, if wanting to put an AIO or a RAD in the front, you're not only going to sacrifice space for longer GPUs, you're going to be restricted again to 240mm because the front part of the PSU shroud isn't actually removable, like we've seen on the likes of the Corsair 4000 series. Though again, it's going to cost you a bit more for that luxury, and you're going to lose out on the included rear ARGB fan. So that's down to you to decide. Now, speaking of the ARGB fans, the Scorpion 3 comes with 3 Tornado fans in the front and 1 in the rear, leaving no need to go out and spend more money just to get your gaming PC how you want it. It's all done for you, and already connected to the included RGB control hub, meaning you can control the 16 addressable LEDs and their 16.8 million colours to your heart's content, whether that be directly from the hub or via your motherboard. The good news here as well is that you don't need to actually take the side panel off to get to the hub, as the included remote gives you, well, almost full flexibility over the colour scheme. Personally, a button on the front I/O would have sufficed, as how often do you really change your RGB colour theme? But I guess the remote is a nice touch. Chieftech also claims that the special 7 fan blades are designed for maximum airflow, low noise and perfect illumination. Though I'm pretty sure every manufacturer claims the same in one way or another. Now, one big letdown though is while the RGB can be controlled through your motherboard software, the fans themselves in terms of airflow can't. And that's a big sticking point for me. As we flip around to the cable side, there's ample room for cable management, especially if the motherboard tray angles inwards, and there's 3 included cable raceways to tie things down as well. I will admit, if you're not using a PSU with flat cables, I think you may struggle a little bit. And the fact that the hard drive cage, which accepts 2 3.5 inch drives, isn't actually removable, space is a bit on the limited side. I'm not quite sure why Chieftech decided to rivet this cage in. I would have much preferred some screws to give me that extra flexibility, as not everyone uses hard drives in this day and age, and would instead opt for M.2 drives or SSDs, of which 2 can be nicely nestled behind the motherboard tray. Now, even with the hard drive cage fixed into place by rivets, there is still room for power supplies up to 200mm in length, though again, cables may end up being your enemy here, especially as the PSU actually slides in from the side, so definitely measure up first. So the big question, how does it actually perform? Well, for anyone who doesn't know, we've reintroduced case testing to our content, and the Scorpion is actually one of the first cases to be tested under our newest methodology, which we have a video on the channel going through it all, so definitely check that out to see how we do it and what components we use. Link is down below. Now, one thing I do need to touch on is that for our testing, we would normally plug all fans into the motherboard and let the fan speed be dictated to by the board itself. Just makes it consistent. Though with the Scorpion, as I mentioned, it all plugs into a fan hub via proprietary connectors and is controlled by the buttons on the hub or by the included remote control, which can also be used for controlling the RGB. So to keep our testing as fair as possible, we set the fans to their medium speed profile out of the 3 and ran our tests. Starting with the CPU, at idle, the Scorpion 3 gave us temperatures of 31.6 degrees, and at load, the temperature rose to 66.9 degrees, which I'm more than happy with under the low profile Noctua cooler. The GPU sat at 34 degrees at idle, and at load increased to 58.1 degrees, which at this point, the GPU's fans didn't even get a chance to ramp up. The chipset sat at a cool and comfortable 32.6 degrees at idle, though did rise to 61.1 degrees at load under our Furmark Prime 95 torture test. Lastly, the M.2 drive went from a quite warm already 46 degrees at idle to 51.5 degrees at load. Moving on to gaming, and during our Metro Exodus Enhanced Edition torture test, we saw the CPU sit at 47.1 degrees, the GPU at 54.1, the chipset at 44.7, and the M.2 at 46.9. Which I think is safe to say are all pretty reasonable, respectable numbers during a typical gaming situation. When it came to acoustics, at idle the reading was 38.5 decibels, while at load it increased to 44.7 decibels. So I think we can safely say, even with the limited comparison data, the component stayed relatively cool, even under more extreme testing circumstances. There's also room for some give and take. If you fancied reducing the noise slightly, you could turn the fans down to their quietest setting. Or if you fancy getting those temperatures down, you could always increase the fan speed and sacrifice noise instead. Though I do wish this was something I could kind of set and forget within the motherboard's BIOS, which is what I'd really expect at this price point. At the end of the day, this isn't a perfect case, but I don't think Chieftech were ever really aiming for it to be. It's kind of mid-range. Maybe I've said that wrong because sure, every manufacturer wants to have the best product on the market, but that always comes at a cost, a physical cost to the consumer. And I don't think Chieftech are going to be too keen on essentially pricing themselves out of the market completely, especially when you compare it to other brands like Corsair and Lian Li, who are producing boatloads more products. And kind of with anything, the more you make, the better the cost it is to make. It's really that simple. I'd personally consider the Scorpion 3 as a, let's say, happy middle ground. It's got some of the right ingredients, it just needs a little refinement in the process. And I guess that's what we'll see from the Scorpion 4. I mean, the main thing there is the front panel being swapped out for mesh to give even more airflow, which, I mean, I'll admit, based on our testing of the Scorpion 3 with the glass on the front, I'm not actually sure it will make a huge difference, as it already performed pretty damn well. But I honestly think the mesh, at least in my opinion, and at least from the pictures I've seen, has a more kind of premium look to it. So, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see. Not only how it looks, but what kind of difference it will actually make when it comes to our testing. And again, we use all the same testing components, so we can do a direct comparison. So let me know if you want to see that by chiming in the comments section below. I'm also hoping, and this is a big thing for me, the biggest letdown of this, is that they changed the fans out for something with a standard PWM connector. By all means, keep using a hub for those who maybe don't have tons of onboard PWM connectors, but at least make it as part of the industry standard. There's not many brands now using proprietary connectors. They've all kind of learnt the error of their ways and moved on. It just makes things a little bit simpler. The other area that I touched on is the quality. Yes, it's on the cheaper end of the scale, but slightly thicker materials and definitely a matte paint job would, well, do wonders. I don't want them to kind of pull the wool over people's eyes, but it's the little things that I don't think will cost them tons of money to do, but could pay them back in dividends through the amount of sales and sheer volume that they would shift. What I will say is that it's nice to see Chieftech back in the game. I'm never going to dismiss a company wanting to bring products to the consumer. It gives us more choice, more flexibility, and that is ultimately what drives competition. Innovation and design and all that good stuff, and I'm all for that. I can say one thing, Chieftech has come a long way in the design department from what I remember as a kid. Didn't you think? I mean, some of them cases were just awful. Let me know what you think in the comments section below. And if you like this video, a sub to the channel would be amazing. If you want to support us, you can do so over on the eTeknix store, link is down below, or via patreon.com/eTeknix. And I'll see you in the next one. See you later, guys. Bye-bye.